Hey, this is Racicot with Stone Glacier. I'm going to take you through how to set up the SkyTarp 10 in the A-frame configuration. The SkyTarp 10 weighs in at 19.5 ounces. It includes the tarp with 6 attached guy lines, 12 stakes, 4 extra guy lines, and stuff sacks. The dimensions come in at 9'8" by 9'4". The SkyTarp adds a very versatile tool to your kit for protection from snow, rain, wind, and sun. When you receive your SkyTarp, it's going to include the tarp with 6 pre-attached guy lines. It's also going to include the kit that has 12 stakes and also 4 additional guy lines that can be added to the center points of the tent or along the bottom edge. While there are many different configurations you can use for the SkyTarp 10, setting it up in an A-frame configuration is going to be the most weather resistant, it's going to buck the most wind, and especially if you're leaving it unattended around camp, using it as a secondary shelter, or if you have to use it as a primary shelter, emergency shelter if you get caught out overnight. So the first step when we set it up as an A-frame is we're going to start from one corner and we're going to place our first stake. And then if we go approximately 8 feet, and you can step it off just by feet right here, come and set your second stake. That's going to set up the correct pitch to go all the way to the ground and have about a 42-inch ridge line. And then as we go down to the other end, you'll see I'm about 4 inches from my stake on this end. I have the tarp stretched out. I place my third stake down here, 4 to 6 inches from that corner, and then do the same thing. 8 feet to that corner and 4 to 6 inches from either end. And then your stakes are going to be set, and it's going to be easier to set up when you just have one person. So when I come back over, I'll start on this corner. I like to keep the guy line about 10 to 12 inches long. Set it up around there. This clam cleat is where you can take up your adjustment. So just keep the loop fairly small so it'll stay tight on your stake. Now we'll move to the other end. Same thing here. We'll make this loop just a little bit smaller. Right there. 10 to 12 inches. Tighten it a little bit. Now we're ready to stand the center ridge line. Now you're going to want to place this pole center line in between the stakes that you have. Then when we grab our ridge line, I'm just going to plant the pole in. About 4 to 6 inches from the end, we're going to tie a clove hitch. You can use several different knots on here, but if we start with a clove hitch, wrap that one up and over, peel that, give yourself a little width, right over the top, tighten it up, and now you still have your clam cleat with the adjustment on this end so you can take up some of that. You're going to want that pole pretty vertical. We come down to the other end, we're going to stake it out. Once again, we don't need to have it really tight. We just need to have it secure so it keeps that pole upright until we move to the other end, and then we can take up our adjustment. So now we'll move down to the other end. Same process. Come down here. I have this one set generally where we need it. Make sure that stakes in. I'll go to the back side. Same thing. Flip over. Get my stake in there. Now same process with this pole. I'm going to move it back out just a little bit so it's more in line. Plant it. You can see the pole height I have about up to my hip line. It's about 42 inches tall. Now we'll do the same thing. Clove hitch. Wrap that up and over itself. Actually, I misplaced that a little bit. One moment, I lost my hitch. Tighten it down, pull it snug, get set into the ground. And now I can put a little bit of tension on it. Now, once I have my guy lines out, I'll start with my ridge line, make sure that it's snug, which it is. It's pretty tight right there. Then I can move to my corners, start to take up some tension on the corner and work my way around. And we'll start to pull this tight. Same thing on the back side. Once we get a little tension there, we don't need quite as much here. And now you can start to move this up and down. If you decide that you want it closer, so that we have a bit more coverage to the ground, you can certainly do that. So now you can vary how much vent you want. If it's a very warm day and you're trying to get more air movement, or if you're expecting a lot of rain and want it closer down to the ground, you can set that up. Now, our last step, these are where our 4 additional guy lines come in. So I've already attached 3 of them, and they go to these center spots with the squares sewn on them. I've kept the very last one out here so we can show you how to attach it. The easiest way is just to tie a loop, an overhand loop. Keep it fairly large so that you can pass the clam cleat through there, just like that. Now what this allows you to do is it allows you to attach it to any point if you decide to use this in a different configuration. In an A-frame, this is going to be our best guy out point. Then I'm just going to pass the other end through. If you allow that to come tight. And then what this allows you to do is if you're in the field and you decide to detach this one from this point, and say you're going to a single pitch, or you have some sort of crazy configuration in between trees, you can move these guy lines to one of your end spots. And then my preferred is to not pull them straight out, but to give yourself just a little bit of an angle, and it'll help keep everything tight. And roll through and get these 4. Now, depending on how much wind that you have enough stakes. Once we have all these, you have 2 stakes left over, and you can come to one of your center points, and you can take your center point all the way to ground. Or if you think that you're going to be getting heavier wind from one direction or another, you can use both stakes on one side to try to keep it pinned to the ground. 2 notable points with the ridge line of the SkyTarp 10. The first one is the attachment to the trekking pole. As we mentioned before, we're suggesting using a clove hitch as you go around. We do not suggest that the trekking pole be put underneath the ridge line or underneath the fabric. And this is primarily because it's going to buck wind better when it's in this spot, because it's going to be, the tent can flex with it and it won't create undue stress on the seams. The second point is underneath the ridge line, there are 3 plastic loops as we go down through, and you can string line in between those individual 3 pieces to either hang wet pieces of gear, gloves, socks, those types of things to dry out. The primary setup for the SkyTarp 10 is the A-frame, but we also have 2 other configurations that you can use as well. When we move over to this is a modified A-frame, similar in the respect of the height of the ridge pole, but we bring the front out over to give that clearance to glass. You can set this up on a slope, you can set it up on the flat. It's really good in the field when you just need a temporary shelter. On the back side, we use 5 stakes to keep the back down. And then on setup, you move forward. Ridge line would be next. Give it a slight forward pull on the tension. And then the very front of the tarp, And we're going to come almost at a 45-degree angle out with the guy line, and that's going to create the best structure for the tarp. The third configuration is a standard lean-to. This also works very well for a quick setup in the field, glassing, and this works extremely well when you might have a steep bank that you're butted up to. You can even fold the tarp in half if it's extremely steep, but generally speaking, it's going to be best off like this. We do the same thing, 5 stakes on the back side. Then as you move forward, whatever height you'd like on the very front, so you have good vision for glassing. And then again, run your guidelines out at a 45-degree angle. You'll notice that on all of these trekking poles, we are using that clove hitch. It tightens in around the handle and won't allow it to slip or slide down. So those are the 3 configurations that we suggest for the SkyTarp. Feel free to give us a call at the shop if you have any questions.